Hey everyone, it's Luke here from ltgaming, and I'm back today with another review, this time in the wargaming genre. I would like to thank Slitherine for the review key and much appreciate the opportunity to play this game in depth and explore my critical thoughts. My venture into hex-based wargaming is proving both a challenge and a crazy amount of fun. Make sure to like and subscribe, and also drop us a comment about Warplan Pacific or any other wargames you would recommend I try out. Okay, let's get into this. So what is Warplan Pacific? The game was released in 2021 as a sequel to the original Warplan, which focused on the Western theatre of World War II. The game then recently came to Steam in March of 2022 and caught my attention. The game is developed by Kraken Studios and is published by Slitherine. It retails normally at $33.99 or your regional equivalent. This time the game focuses on the Pacific theatre with a massive scale and impressive scope. The game is essentially an operational wargame based on the traditional hexed map, which is typical in these type of games. The game consists of 5 single-player campaigns, hot seat, and play-by-email multiplayer. All of this combines to make a well-rounded experience. The game is developed by a single developer, and I will say out of the gate, this is a very impressive achievement. The scale of the game is one of the highlights and contains enough hexes for 62 potential countries and operational campaigns that give you that one more turn feeling. The hex-based map contains 15 different types of terrain and 12 different resource types, while visually communicating weather and other important information. The game has a wide range of units, and there are 22 different types with 15 different attributes and 14 different specialities for units in the game. These can be applied as you level up with experience. Each country has their own units with their own attributes also. The combat in the game takes place on land, sea and air, with a multi-hex system based on operation points allowing for multiple moves and attacks, allowing for frontline breakthroughs. This aspect becomes very important as both sides entrench and dig in. You are constantly looking for weaknesses in the enemy line that you can exploit. I found that this represented modern warfare quite well, as large battles are slow moving with occasional massive breakthroughs. Large offensive and entrenched positions also make up a huge aspect of the game. Additionally, units can be impacted by breakdown, land infantry units can be split, reformed, and corps may be detached into divisions, and armies may split. So let's talk a little bit about game options. The game comes with quite a lot of options to customize the experience, and I did have a play with the different ways to visualize my units and UI experience. The standard options for audio and graphics are all included, and while these are basic, the included options for colorblind players, for example, is a really nice addition. The game comes with an internal editor, which is very welcome for those who want to play about with maps and scenarios. While not supported by the Steam workshop that I could see, there is a link to a mod workshop available. This takes you to the Matrix Games forum, where simple instructions are listed for modifications. Let's talk a little about the UI, map and graphics. The game is based on the Unity engine and has an extremely smooth and user-friendly interface. For me this was a joy, as it led on from my experience in another wargame, Attack at Dawn North Africa, also featured on the channel. The map scrolling is very good for a wargame, and trust me, this is an issue in many other games in the genre, especially the older ones. English Civil War, I'm looking at you. So while it may seem a simple observation, it made for a very good user experience when playing the game. The map is truly beautiful to behold and is on a huge scale. Warplan Pacific also has a very good hex design, with information being clearly presented to the player. With a quick glance, you can see road and rail networks and the weather that is affecting your operations. Looking out over the Pacific is at first daunting, but quickly becomes awe-inspiring as you consider your first moves. This aspect will appeal to many wargamers. Let's move on to sound and music. The music in Warplan Pacific is excellent, an appealing mix of rousing anthems and more relaxing tracks throughout. I understand that game music can be the first thing that people turn off, but for me, you would be missing out on a part of the experience with this game. I would at least listen to the music a few times before turning it off. However, if you are like me, you will find the score to be a pleasant companion as you launch your operations across the Pacific. The sound effects in the game do their job and convey the kind of sonic response that you would expect from the movement and attack decisions. This type of genre leans towards simplistic sound design, and in this department the game reaches the bar of its peers. Overall, the sound design is very good, with the highlight being the excellent score, which I'd encourage you not to turn off. So let's get on to what really matters in wargames, and that is the gameplay. The gameplay in Warplan is exceptional, and overall easy to learn while being entertaining and fun. The production system is a particular highlight and is very easy to understand. You get a certain amount of production per turn, and this is then allocated to resupplying your units with reinforcements or building new units for your campaign. Building new units is easy to understand and clearly presented, with several unique units for different nations also available. There are a lot of unit choices without becoming overly complex or having to worry that you are building the wrong composition for your forces. If you want numbers, then build infantry. Need to break through in a certain area? Then armour is of course the way to go. Naval units are represented as individual ships, and this adds to the immersion for sure. The only element I found a little confusing was carrier interdiction. Counting hexes can be a little hit and miss when considering carrier engagements, for example. However, after a little research, this did become easier. The game focuses, in general, on many strategic aspects of war, and protects you from having to micromanage too many aspects during your campaign. For me, the supply system was excellent. I've often struggled with this aspect of wargames in the past, and yet here it works well. Most of the time. Initially I struggled with some aspects of naval supply, but worked out that you need to use oil tankers to keep fleets in the green. On land, the supply system is easily called up in the overlay, and represented in hex by the relevant supply number. When I had an issue with supply, it was never on the land side of combat, but always on the naval side. The AI is competent and can fight quite well when required. It will never replace a human opponent, so this must be considered when playing the game. Overall though, it puts up a solid fight and is challenging throughout. Technology and diplomacy are both in the game, but are quite lightweight in their approach. I think their addition is positive, and on the diplomatic side, you can even declare war as the US on the Soviet Union, for instance, making for a fun dynamic in-game. Technology drives improvement of your units, but outside of that is simple in its approach. I would rather have the research mechanism than not, and that is a good sign, however. I did have a few issues with the game while playing. Sometimes my armies retreated, and it was not always clear why they had shattered, as they looked to trade well during the battle. The display of battle information can also be quite fast, and hard to take in during the larger campaigns. You can go back and look at these during your turn, but the quick display of information can get a little confusing at times. Overall though, I found the gameplay to be absolutely brilliant, and I was immersed in my campaigns from the very start. So how difficult is this game to learn? I found Warplan Pacific to be quite an intuitive game to pick up and play. I did have to consult the manual on mechanisms like effectiveness of my combat units and how this was managed in-game, but overall, I taught myself the game in only a few hours. The in-game manual, which can be accessed via the question mark, is also of some help, but could do with fleshing out in places. It provided a good overview, but the manual was a lot better at providing the depth of explanation that I needed. This works well if you have time to consult and read aspects of the PDF manual. I would suggest that if you are getting into wargaming, that you make time for this sort of activity. The only daunting aspect at start was the lack of tutorial, which initially did kind of put me off, having come from a less complex wargame. However, as I stated, the intuitive gameplay and the great UI helped me to teach myself the game in only a short time. Do I understand every aspect? Possibly not, but I know enough to compete and beat the AI at its own game. As I play more, I will dig into the manual to clarify any existing points and actually find this quite an enjoyable process. At no time was I completely overwhelmed and felt that I could still fight effectively without having the total knowledge of every aspect of the game. This is a credit to the game's design and its operational level. Right, let's conclude my thoughts on this game. Warplan Pacific hits the sweet spot for an operational wargame in both scale and complexity. It was the perfect step up for me from an entry-level wargame and has provided hours of fun and challenge during my time with it so far. It's one of those games that you finish playing and then start thinking about what you will do next once you get back into it. Ultimately, the game strikes a wonderful balance between accessibility and complexity. Despite a few improvements that could be made and some minor gripes, this game is highly recommended and one of the best games I've played so far this year. I intend to play on and would welcome a Let's Play on the channel, so do let me know in the comments your impressions of the game. Have you played it, or are you interested in playing it? I hope you enjoyed this definitive review of Warplan Pacific, and that you stick around on the channel for all the great content we are currently creating. I've been Luke from LT Gaming, and as always, I will see you on the next one.